A couple of things that we forgot to mention last time. Traveling south towards Neiva, we had a bit of an incident with a minibus driver who was tailgating Jess to an extent that I was not at all comfortable with. So I accelerate forward to get in between Jess and the tailgater, and I start shouting some very ugly words to him in Spanish. Now the other thing that happened is, for the first time, I think since I was 16 years old, I had an at-fault accident. I was looking down at my GPS and brake lights in front of me couldn't stop quite fast enough, and I rear-ended a white sedan. It was maybe a minivan, something like that. Anyway,
it was a woman who was driving and a man was in the passenger seat.
You know, no one was hurt. No,
it scared the shit out of me. You were right. I was right behind you, and all of a sudden I saw, and then you like lost your balance, and I thought you were gonna drop the bike. And I even yelled out at you. If I had the camera on, you would have heard me yell out at you, Greg. They
were a little upset, but I was just said, "Are you guys okay? Is everybody in the car okay?" And
we didn't make a dent.
Did nothing to either the bike or the car, and so the guy had to let it go.
So after my fall in the Tatacoa Desert, we rode the bikes back to Bogota, and I got mine serviced at BMW. We thought that it was the steering column that was damaged, but it turns out it was just the handlebar that had been bent and the front wheel was misaligned, which was why it was going at an angle. So we got it all sorted and we were good to go.
So after picking Jess's bike up, the BMW, about midday, we decided not to cut through the middle of Bogota again, since BMW's on the north and we wanted to go south. So we kind of swung up north, hit some traffic, but not too much, and went up north to Cajica, and then west and kind of circled around the city. From there we went to a town called Mosquera, and then south from there to Anapoima, and then ultimately to Apulo, where we stayed the night. It was nice riding, kind of mountain highway, real beautiful. So Apulo is this cute little town in the mountains. It boasts, quote, the best climate in the world. I don't know if that's true, but it was really nice while we were there. And that's also where we discovered Colombian fruit juices.
Yeah, we're a bit far south to just be discovering it now, but...
Yeah, but it was...
They were lovely. Ugh.
Yeah, just incredible.
Yeah, my favorite one is Mora blackberry. They like put the pulp of the blackberries in and they mix it with milk or with water, either one.
A little bit of sugar.
Yeah, oh, they're fantastic. So the next morning, Greg left me to do a little off-road section.
I went to Cerro de Peña Blanca, a little area and a few kilometers or so from the town, and it was a nice little ride. After my little off-road, we got back on the mountain highway and continued going south at a town called Girodot. Okay. We kind of took a bit of a detour, which took us way up to the north.
Yeah, Greg said, oh, let's just do a little detour. We've got some time. It'll only take us like an extra 50 kilometers out of the way. I said, okay, sure.
It took a lot more than that, and part of the reason is the GPS was telling us that there was a place to cross the river. It turned out it was on a ferry, only there was no ferry. That's what it said. It was no ferry though. It was a
dugout
little canoe, and we did not at all feel comfortable putting the bikes on little canoes. So we had to go way further north to a bridge. I think it's called Puente de la Libertad. Anyway, and then meet up with another main highway to go back south. So after our detour, we eventually got into Ibagué, which was back on kind of the main highway that we'd been going on. And then from there, before the end of the day, we made it as far as Cajamarca, which comes after a just gorgeous stretch of twisties and mountain highway.
Yeah, really nice highway.
Just beautiful, but lots of trucks, because it's kind of a main route from Bogota south.
Yeah, it was practice for me trying to pass the trucks.
Yeah, and she was doing great, but really a lot of high-speed twisties, just fantastic.
So we were looking for our hotel, and the first one that we found, Greg went in and he asked for how much it was going to cost and if they had parking. Right beside the hotel, there was a lot of construction going on, and the road was dug out. There was only the sidewalks left. And so Greg comes back to me and he says, yeah, the place looks good. It was cheap and it looked clean. And I asked where the parking was, and he said, oh, it's on the sidewalk. We'll have to ride along the sidewalk right beside. So I said, fine, that's okay, as long as you ride the bike for me. And so Greg took Penny first and rode her across. and it was like the tightest corner like possible for him to be able to ride his bike in. But he managed
any
it.
error and you could really just fall into the dugout.
You either fall into the dugout or you fall right into the wall on the other side.
Yeah. Anyway, it turns out that what the woman did not explain clearly was that the parking was on the next block, and she was suggesting, oh, just ride across the sidewalk instead of which I guess I just understood it as
that it was going to be right
yeah.
there.
Instead of suggesting just ride up one block, go across the street,
go around,
and come back a block, and there's the parking. So anyway,
that's what we did with my bike.
We created an adventure.
Yes.
It was more really great twisties after Cajamarca. Just fantastic riding. And then we kind of descended a bit as we came close to Cali, which is the second largest city in Colombia.
And one of the most dangerous in the world.
Yeah, apparently so. We had enough of kind of big cities for a little while since we spent so much time in Bogota. So we kind of decided to bypass. And we went to a town called Jamundi, which is really interesting because as we got there, we felt like we were back in Liberia or somewhere in Africa.
No.
Because there's this really interesting mix of black and white or black Latino. And so it just was really shocking, really interesting.
Yeah, and coming in on the outskirts, it was a bit poor, so it did look
It
quite
looked a lot like
Africa-like.
being kind of back in Liberia. It turns out that Jamundi is one of the most dangerous cities or towns in Colombia. They've had FARC problems for a while. They suspect that there's insurgents living in the town. We didn't really know much about that.
No, and I had found the place online because we were looking for places to camp, and people said that was a really nice place because there's rivers and things to camp by. So I said, okay, let's do that instead.
So we went into the national park, and
even though there was no real sign for the national park.
Yeah, we just kind of followed a road, and eventually the road turned into a dirt road, and I left Jess. Went up the dirt road a few kilometers or so into some hills, and I found this spot that just looked great. It was some person's little farm, little plot of land, and I started asking around and found the caretaker because the guy who owns it lives in Cali and wasn't going to be there, and he said, sure, go ahead, set up camp. From Jamundi, it was south on the 25 to Popayan, which is a really pretty town.
Yeah.
They call it, I guess, the White City, because a lot of colonial architecture and all the facades are white. They had an earthquake there in '83, I think, and it just crippled the town. And there's still some kind of vestiges of where it hasn't really bounced back. But otherwise, I mean, it's really pleasant, really gorgeous.
Yeah, we were planning to go there right before I had the fall. We were supposed to cross over to that side and go, but
that's right.
We weren't
so we
able
finally
to make it.
had like caught up with where we were before. And this was also a spot where we started to see Jess get aggressive in lane splitting, which is fantastic to see because for a long time now, she's been very concerned about the width of the bike and the cases.
Yeah, we're very wide.
We're
not
wide.
like those small little like motor taxis that can just pass through anywhere. I'm very concerned, especially because I see Greg in front of me and he's even wider than I am.
But
so it's concerning.
But she's starting to get a little more daring, and this is
well. That was because there were a lot of cars just lined up, and we were just standstill. But there was a nice little pathway on the right side, so I just took the opportunity and went for it.
From Popayan, it was just a long stretch of beautiful riding, mountain highway all the way south. This is the main road, the only road to the border crossing.
Border to Ecuador.
We got to Pasto, which is another major city in Colombia, and then from there we continued to Ipiales, which is on the border with Ecuador. The border crossing from Colombia into Ecuador should have been really easy. In Quito, there is right now a convention for this company called Herbalife. They have it's a bit like a pyramid scheme, I think. They have distributors or vendors all over, and they're having a big convention for Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia. So there were probably a couple thousand people at least crossing the border.
All of the buses were filled, and the people just came out, and the security had to try and find places to put them so that they could be in line for the immigration.
So eventually we got our vehicle permits for Ecuador. We made the town of Ibarra after some pleasant riding. There's a lake next to the city of Ibarra, whose name I'll butcher. But it's a beautiful little lake. There's lots of parks around it. And we just kind of rode around and figured we'd find some accommodation somewhere.
Yeah, by the lake, yeah.
Just as we were kind of about to turn back, we found a little camping area. It's been open for about four months now. International camping thing. It's owned by this German couple who moved out to Ibarra, and it's just this gorgeous kind of
nice
little
big
plot of land
they have.
And they've been putting fruit trees in and building it up, and
had a water system put in.
That's right. Spent a whole lot of money to pipe in potable water, and yeah, just gorgeous. So for $3 per person, we set up the tent.
And the best thing was that they had a bathroom and a shower with hot water. It was lovely.
So from Ibarra, we continued south. We went to this town called Otavalo, which is really very pleasant. It's really gorgeous. The downtown is really cute. It's supposed to have the largest Saturday market in all of South America. We passed through there on Thursday, I think.
Yeah, we're always missing
We're
those
always
days.
missing those kind of specific day things. From Otavalo, we came into Quito. We spent the afternoon walking around town, the Mariscal Sucre area, which is kind of the touristy, trendy kind of part of town. Really nice, lots of mountain climbing and outdoor stores, so we had fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
In Quito, we went to Mitad del Mundo, which is kind of a park and museum area for the zero latitude,
on the equator.
To identify the equator. But the real highlight is this little museum that's just kind of adjacent to it. At the museum, they have some really interesting exhibits. They have, for example, one of the penis fishes.
Oh, the penis fish, yeah, and she explained it so well.
That how
they get attracted to your urine.
To the ammonia, I guess, in the urine. So I guess in Ecuador, that's a problem among some of the tribal groups.
Yeah, but supposedly they're quite small, but this one was quite large.
Yeah, really large.
So they must have had to get it out of somebody's penis and put it on display.
Yeah, so apparently once it swims up there, it starts to grow because it's real small when it goes up. But the fins kind of act as spines.
Yeah.
And so the only way to get it out is surgical.
Yeah.
So the tribal people that live in those areas have an interesting way of dealing with this, while also not wearing clothes. And that is they wear this little rope belt that kind of holds the penis
up their penis.
And I guess kind of puts pressure on it to keep it closed. And
so that nothing can swim up it.
They also had an exhibit about one of the tribes that does the head shrinking. What they do is they cut off the enemy's head and they pull out the skull. So that now it's just the skin that's there, and they do a process where
with some herbs and things, and they smoke it,
and it shrinks the skin down, and so really it's just that the bones have been taken out.
Yeah, and they fill it with some rocks or something to give it some shape, and then they just put it on display. They either wear it around their neck or they put it on the top of their spear.
We got the demonstration of how the water goes. What is it,
clockwise in the southern and counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere.
And kind of just goes straight down.
Right at the equator.
Right at the equator. One of the exhibits was balancing an egg on a nail head. It is easier here in Ecuador along the equator than anywhere else that's not on the equator. It doesn't necessarily make it that easy. And I say that because I managed to do it. It took a number of tries. Because of the magnetic forces on the southern and northern sides of the equator, walking kind of the line of the equator is actually really difficult. And that was one of the kind of demonstrations. Jessica was our volunteer.
Who already has horrible balance on either side of the equator, so to think that she would be any good on the equator is just wishful thinking.
Right, and so to make it a correct test and more difficult, you have to walk the line with your
eyes.
Arms out and your head up and eyes closed. After the museum, we went for lunch, and we had cuye. Cuye is the sound that the guinea pig makes, and so that's what they call guinea pigs in Spanish. And it's kind of a
Delicacy,
I
Yeah,
guess.
they're quite expensive. I guess they must now rear them. In the past, they must have gotten them from the wild.
But I wouldn't say it tastes like chicken because it doesn't.
No, it's a bit sweeter.
It's a bit sweeter. In some parts, it's really tender.
Mm-hmm.
And I also I ate the brain.
Oh, I ate the brain. Yes, you did.
It was good.
Yeah.